Hey everybody, it's Katie from Bobby Hair Studio. Today I'm going to show you how I did this beautiful beige dimensional balayage on naturally very dark hair. This one actually came with a ton of speed bumps to go over, so there were some issues for toning that I had to deal with in the sink, but I am excited to show you guys how we ended up with this result despite the hiccups along the way. So we started out with about a year of regrowth since her last balayage. She's a teenager, so her mom sends her to me about once a year, and we like to give her something really dimensional with lots of contrast, but also a soft root so she can grow it out for a long time. We're going to start today's service with our first bowl of Blonde Me Bleach and 7 volume developer mixed with 20 volume developer and Cool Additive by Schwarzkopf as well. This is a very blue pigment, and what it does is adds a little bit extra more of that toning power while you lift into the hair so that you don't have to have so much orange to tone out later on in the sink. Now, this is where my big mistake came from. This early on, I should not have mixed a 7 volume mixed with a 20 volume for her first bowl. Her foils actually ended up going in a lot faster than I thought, so even though this sat for about an hour and a half in her hair in each foil, it was not strong enough to lift her to the level that I needed. So a ton of her hair was actually a lot oranger than I expected it to be, you know, with all of these 7 and 20 volume foils. And so I am glad that I did level up to 20 volume later, and you'll see the big difference in the chair. But of course, we are all about honesty and clarity and transparency in this channel. So I wanted to show you how I mixed it and why this wasn't a great idea. Because if you look at her hair, she's like a level 4 or 5, and she has a very, very hard orange yellow undertone to her hair, very goldeny. And I guess if you don't have enough power with the lightener, it just will want to stop at about a level 7. So despite the lift issues that we're going to be facing later on that I'm going to address with my toning, my application is actually something I really wanted to show you guys today, because this is something that I feel is a really easy application for a lot of new stylists to do. And it's also great for if you've got a little bit of a brain fog kind of day, because you just section everything in horseshoe shaped sections all the way up the head, so that you're working with small areas at a time. Everything's being done symmetrically, and you don't have to worry about one side being done before the other. Everything's building up on top of itself and insulating everything really nicely. And the way that this has all been sectioned and patterned in is just one of my favorite ways to do a full new balayage. This is a great way to do it too, because if you are working with some areas that you want to add in a little bit more or less contrast, you want to get a little bit more artsy with it, then you're going to remember what you did on the other side, because you do it immediately after. You're not doing the whole left side and then the whole right side. You're working up the head from the nape of the neck all the way to the front, and you're working in these sections that are, I guess, yeah, horseshoe shaped. They're just going up the head like in big circles. The way I'm applying these foils right now is I want to get a pop of blonde at the very ends of her hair underneath. This is going to give her a longer lasting blonde rather than giving her all the dimension underneath. She's going to get a lot of blonde underneath and a lot of dimension on top with some foiling work. This may sound kind of like a backwards way to do things, but trust me, this is how a lot of my clients really like having their hair done these days, is with all of the big popping pieces underneath, because everything underneath grows out really softly and you don't see the roots. And by the time you do see the roots, it's grown out for so long that everything is super, super soft. Versus everything up on top, if you give it some little foiling work and you smudge the root really well, it might look like less contrast on the top, but it also blends out more softly. And then at the top, you're going to be doing some specialized foiling along her parting. And of course, I'm going to go into that with a little bit more detail afterwards, a little later on, so you'll get to see that as well. The way I'm applying to these pieces is actually very important as well. I'm basically loading up my Framar Power Painter brush with a lot of product, and I'm using my Framar paddle as well. This is not a sponsored video, by the way. I just really like these tools. And I am loading these things up with lots of products so that we really, really saturate the hair. Even though we are back combing and weaving out some of this hair, there's still a lot in each foil. but it's going to be sitting in a very warm, insulated place for a while, so I don't mind actually foiling a slight bit thicker than I normally would if I was going to be lifting to like a level 9, 10. With this front piece right here in front of the ear, I am weaving this and just going to bring it up as high and as soft as I can. So it's like this little soft highlight, because everything around the ears tends to show lines a lot more, so I don't want it to be as hard of a slice as I would do everywhere else for the money piece. As I'm foiling through the front and sides of the hair, I'm basically trying to still weave out a little bit on my pieces. I know my kind of body's getting in the way in some of these shots, but I'm essentially trying to make sure that there is a soft transition between the money piece and the back where there's going to be less foiling. So what I'm doing is I am taking a little bit more of those weaves out towards the back as we're heading towards the back of the head, and leaving in stronger weaves into the foil up towards the front. So you can do this with either slices or with weaves, but angling things, even with your color placement higher up towards the front, also achieves a bit of this look to blend in from the money piece towards the back, so you don't have this really obvious looking separation between the two types that you're doing. In the back, I am not being as bold as I am in the front with how much lightener I place up, how high I'm placing it, and with the way that I'm doing it, essentially. I mean, you can see how I'm painting up on the back. I'm painting a little bit lower and feathering up more rather than painting stronger lines higher up. Only anything that's being pressed down onto the board is going to saturate through further, as you're going to see with this piece. I'm weaving out, leaving out those little low lights, backcombing for some blend, and I want it to be higher up, so wherever I'm putting it solidly on the board is getting full saturation. Anywhere else that I'm leaving away and I'm hand painting onto is going to get a much softer result. Working up towards the crown, I am working in almost like a half moon crescent kind of shape. I am keeping the color away from the roots of the crown area because that's where the hair tends to split open the most with a parting. So I do stick a little bit further away from that area so we don't have a really harsh root line as it grows out. Because she does only come in once a year, we want to make sure that this has the softest grow out possible while still maintaining those beautiful blonde colors. This is an area right here that I wanted to talk about because this is an area that doesn't end up lifting very well. And this is very likely because maybe my bowl wasn't as fresh as it should have been. You guys know my rule, every 15 to 20 minutes, you should have a new fresh bowl of lightener if you want to receive an optimal lift. But I think what happened here was maybe my bowl was a little less fresh than that and her hair is a little stubborn. So because I had a 7 and 20 volume mixture, it also didn't have the power that just a 20 volume would have. So that's why this side, especially right here, ended up being super, super orange in the sink, as you're gonna see later. And I had to do some really corrective toning and I had to really kind of like think there for a second on how I was gonna fix that. But you'll get to see all of that later, but this is the moment right here that I'm applying the color, and I think it is, you know, 90% due to the fact that it's a 7 and 20 volume mix, because everything that I used the 7 and 20 volume mix on was more orange than everything that I used just the 20 volume on, but also because this is kind of where I was finishing off my bowl and I was like, hey, it's time to grab a new bowl, it's about time. Now we're getting started on the top, and what I'm doing here is I am going to section away the top into 3 sections. I've got the crown, I've got the mid, and then I have the front kind of face framing money piece. My plan here is to do different foiling methods in each of these areas, and what that's going to do is create an easy way for me to transition from the back to the money piece without having to have a sudden difference in my foils. So the way that I'm doing that is this whole back area is going to be a really soft weave. What I mean by that is I'm kind of doing a finer weave and I'm leaving out more of the dark hair and doing quite a bit of back combing. This is going to result in almost like baby light looking pieces. They're going to be very subtle, it's going to be very soft, and that way we're getting that teardrop shape in the back of her head so that as her balayage grows out, it's not again one line, it's going to form a soft teardrop shape. So this whole back section is going to be done like that, and as I'm working towards the front of this last section here, I'm going to be doing slightly larger weaves and leaving slightly more of the weave in the foil rather than out of the foil. And what's going to happen in the middle of the weave is going to be a transition between the first section that I have in the front, which is my money piece. It's going to be big, strong weaves, lots and lots of blonding. And what's in the back, which is going to be lots of very soft, subtle pieces. So this, I find, is the easiest way to make sure that you are following your plan without running out of time. And if you have things sectioned off, it gives you a quick little reminder of, oh, this is where I want to start changing my foiling. Skipped ahead a little bit in my video just kind of to get the point through. Here is where you can see my weaves are significantly larger and there's still quite a bit being left out, which is going to give us that balance between how much brown is in the back of her head and how much brown is in the front. But also now the weaves are starting to get more large and intense and piecey so that you're getting a little bit more of that like dimensional color contrast up towards the front until we have this big money piece. Once we're finally at the front section, this is going to be a time that I do get, of course, a fresh bowl because the front takes the longest to process whenever you're waiting for everything else to catch up. And this is where I'm going to be taking quite large pieces. And what I like about this is that you can visibly see what's been left out in between them. So this is the last section where I don't actually kind of go into mechanical mode. Like I actually think about every single piece that I'm putting in and where I want to see the blonde, where I want to see the brown, and I want to make sure that on the corners of each of my foils I am getting a blonde piece as well, because I'm trying to expand the amount of blonding that I get in the very top of her hair so she can part her parting anywhere she wants up on the top. And so this helps to do that, is that the first and last bit of hair should always be in the foil, and anything else in between that can be in or out, doesn't really matter. But that first edge of the hair right there and the last edge always going to be in the foil. This is also where you can kind of start alternating your foil types. You can do really teeny tiny foils and then suddenly a really big one, and that's just going to give you that dimension and pieciness that you're looking for, versus doing the exact same weave on every single piece is just going to get you a really stripy look. So that's why I like to switch it up around the hairline and the face, because that's where you're going to notice it the most. If there is like a very similar looking weave being done with every single foil, it's just going to look like big chunks of blonde. So I do like to do a larger weave and a smaller weave and a larger weave and a medium weave, and just kind of switch it up based on where I want to see the blonde. This basically happens all the way until I'm at that money piece, and then I just do big solid slices. I do them very thin so they can process very quickly, but this is where I do that big chunky money piece, and it won't look super chunky once it's done because of course I'm going to use my magic toning powers, but this is where I do back-to-back slices in a row, and this is where you get that big kind of statement piece. Once I'm done foiling these, I'm going to close everything up and hold it all together with a couple of clips so that none of the pieces slip all over the place, and then that's when you get some bleeding in the scalp kind of area. Bleach bleeding, not blood. But that's what we call a foil bleed. So that's how I prevent them as well, is sometimes just using a clip and gently holding it there. Now that our hair has been processed, we are going to pull out the foils. It's been sitting in there for probably about 40 extra minutes after the last foil's been put in. And we want to lift it to like a strong level 8, level 8.5. But as I was talking about earlier, with some of those underneath areas being foiled with some 7 volume mixed with 20, they just didn't lift enough. So they're like a really orangey level 7. And you're gonna see it when I rinse off the foils, you're gonna see it more. But this is the big problem that we're going to have to deal with in the sink later. There's like a couple side pieces that are like very intense. And I'm honestly really glad that I did get a chance to film this so I can use it as a learning experience for me and also a teaching experience, so I can show you guys how I deal with big problems like this, where there is an optimal lift in some places and there's a suboptimal lift in other places. This means that there's going to be some very creative toning going on, but it actually turned out exactly how I wanted it to. And so I'm excited to show you how I did that. So I'm going to be rinsing her hair, shampooing it, adding a little bit of conditioner, rinsing that out, and detangling her in the next few minutes. And then I'm gonna show you my toning, because I'm just gonna skip past all of that. So this is what I'm talking about right here. On the money piece, at least luckily the money piece is light. But honestly, like, girl, look how orange you look. So of course this needs to be fixed. So what that means is I'm going to be mixing together today 8-46 and 7-42. If you don't know those colors, 8-46 is a level 8 and it's a beige chocolate, and a 7 beige, like ash navy color. And most people would probably think about using a ton of ash on these pieces first, but I actually have found that that's not the way to do it in my personal experience. What I prefer to do is to fill in all of the hair with the color that the client wants to be, and then go in on top of problem areas with additional toner that's ashy to neutralize whatever pigment is left. What this does is it prevents the hair from overdoing it essentially and sucking up crazy ash tones in the areas you don't want it, and then not depositing it in areas that you do want it, because that's something that can happen because ash is kind of a controlling color and its porosity is all over the place, especially with hair that is not entirely virgin all the way through. It's had previous lifting. It's going to have porosity issues. So this is why I'm starting with our desired color as our toner. The hair is going to be very porous when it's freshly lifted, and it's going to suck up the first toner that you put into it. So the first toner you do, you want actually to be the color that you're trying to achieve, and then to spot treat with any warmth or ash that you may need to add in later. Now that I have my blonde color on, I'm going to be mixing in my root smudge. So this is what I always like to do afterwards if someone has very porous hair, is I like to put on their desired color first and then the root smudge on top of that. Because as I said earlier, when your hair is freshly bleached, it just sucks up the first toner that it's given. So I'm layering on the dark root toner so that it has a seamless blend and it's really, really beautiful, rather than putting on the dark root first and just sucking up and creating a dark line on her hair. That's definitely something that we don't want to see. So I'm putting on a 5-4 right now, which is a 5 beige, and that's going to give her a really soft blend between the two colors. And then after that, I'm going to go in with another toner, and that's going to be the spot treating on any of those really warm areas. And on some clients, you actually get a little bit of that really orangey color at the top of a foil. It's really weird. I don't really know what causes it. I have some theories. I've talked about it in some other videos of mine, but I'm going to be going in on that with another toner. So here is the next bowl. I've mixed in a little bit of 4-13, which is 4-ash green, and green helps to fight those really, really hard orangey tones. So I'm putting that in, and I'm mixing in whatever residue of the 5-4 was left in my bowl, and I'm applying that on top of the two toners that are already in there, because I don't want it to overtake the hair, but I do want it to help control. And what I'm doing is, with any of these orange areas, I'm scraping away any of the toner that is currently on there to see if it needs a little bit more help. And then that's where I take a tiny bit of the 413 and I'm kind of massaging it through this warm area that we had a problem with on the side here. I'm going to check the other side, see if it needs a little bit of that. And what I'm doing is I'm starting by smudging at the roots and then using my hands to kind of glide it down the hair. And this is where I'm watching it like a hawk, because it can change so quickly in the snap of a finger. Suddenly the hair can go green. So this is why I'm just kind of seeking out any areas, I'm watching it, and then in a few moments here you're going to see that I'm going to rinse it out. And then we're just going to skip ahead to the blow dried version of the hair, and you're going to see it blow dried and then also styled. So here is her hair just blow dried. We didn't do any straightening to it. It's a beautiful color. It is so beigey and soft and blonde. And you can see that it all came together to be a very similar color, even in the lighter areas versus the darker areas that were orange. It's such a beautiful result. So I'm very happy with this toning. So we're going to talk about 2 stars and a wish now. It's something that I do for all of my videos, if I can remember to do it. And it's where I give myself 2 affirmations and then 1 thing I could have done better. So 2 affirmations where the toning formulas were perfect and the blending was quite nice. But the wish, obviously the orange piece on the side, I wish that I could have changed that. And ways that I could have prevented it is by leveling up my developer to just a 20 volume to even start with. But another way that I could have fixed that is to go in separately and refoil a couple of those pieces while I'm waiting for the rest of it to catch up. And that could have also been done too. But today I decided to tone correctively because we didn't want her to be like a level 9. We want her to be like a level 7, 8 beige. So I'm really happy with this service. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Thank you again so much. Please remember to like and subscribe, and then you can see the rest of my videos because I do tutorials like this all the time, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have a lovely day, you guys.